Alright, you guys, so in this video we are going to go through some examples of horizontal translations of both the sine and cosine functions. So the first one that we're looking at is sine theta minus pi over 6. So this we know move the graph to the right pi over 6 units. So since sine theta usually starts at the origin, all of my points are going to be shifted right. Just basically one box, because each of these boxes are worth pi over 6. Okay? So I'm going to now start my sine function here. The middle will now be, instead of at pi, it'll be here. And the last ending of our cycle is going to be off the graph because it shifts to the right. So I'm just putting that there just as an indicator when I actually sketch it, but I'm not going to draw my graph off the axis. I'm going to keep everything on the coordinate axis. So now if we need to figure out the middle, we know the middle will now be here. And the middle of those two will be here. Alright, again, that one is off the graph. So now if I were to draw my curve, it will look something like this. So it's a little bit off, and I'm going to even continue this one that way. Right, so we see it's the same sine function, but we see a little bit more of the left side and a little less of the right because we shifted it right pi over 6 units. So now if we're doing it for cosine, this is actually going to shift to the left pi over 3 units. So this shifts it to the left pi over 3 units. And pi over 3 is actually the same thing as 2 pi over 6. So this is the same thing as 2 pi over 6, which is basically 2 of these squares. So that's 2 of these. So each one is worth 1 pi over 6. So 2 pi over 6 is going to be 2 squares. So I think it might help if I actually draw the original cosine function. So I'm going to draw that here, alright, so that we can actually see the shift a little bit better. So this is our original cosine, and we know it curves. And now if we're going to shift this to the left, 2 of those units, we have to be careful, alright? So this one will be off. The first point will be off the axis, and then the second point will actually land us here because we're doing it 2 units. Well, sorry, pi over 3 units, but that's 2 of these squares. I'm going to do the same thing with this, and I'm also going to do the same thing with this, and the same thing with the last point as well. So our shift of cosine will look something like this. Alright, so we can't actually see the entire cycle because and this continues to go down if we were to continue it off. Alright, so this is our cosine that shifted a little bit to the left, pi over 3 units. I actually am going to go back and draw the original sine graph just so you guys could see. So our original sine graph looks something like this. Alright, and we see that the green graph is a shift of it to the right. Hopefully this helps, and you'll do a couple more examples. If you guys have any questions, write me a comment underneath this assignment, or come to my office hours.